Hi everybody and welcome back to my workshop. I am the People's Carpenter, Glenn Peoples. Anyone who watched this channel from the very beginning or who discovered this channel and then went right back to the start to watch early videos will recall that the official launch of this channel, the first introductory video, was delayed, and the reason that it was delayed is because I had to build this garden shed outside. I think it's a pretty nice garden shed made from timber with cedar weatherboards. I didn't build a door for that garden shed because I said that the sliding barn door that I was going to make would be a project that I would make on this channel, The People's Carpenter. That day has arrived. The reason you're so far away from me, or I'm so far from the camera, is that between the camera and between the camera and me, common mistake. People think it's smarter to say I, but it's often wrong. Between me and the camera are these 2.2 meter long pieces of macrocarpa, 150 millimeters wide, 25 millimeters thick. They'll be a little bit less than that by the time that I've machined them, made them look respectable. This is what I'm going to make the door from. But before I do any of that, let's get outside. We need to measure the opening. Right, so by my reckoning, this door needs to be about 2 meters and 2 centimeters, so 202 centimeters. Sorry, I've got my handheld camera here, so everything's a bit wonky when I move around. There is a digger next door doing some kind of excavation work. Okay, so I make this to be about 115 centimeters wide, and I would want the door to be slightly wider than the opening. Okay, we've got some good rough and ready dimensions to work with. Back to the workshop. Now, I bought these as 150 millimeters by 25 millimeters. That's only approximate. They're not pre-dressed, they are rough sawn. I'm going to need, I don't know, maybe 9, possibly 10, but at least 9 boards to make the main door, the basic rectangle, not the frames. And that means I need to go through these and check for thickness, because there is some of them that are of one thickness, the thicker ones, and there's some of them of a different thickness, slightly thinner. They're all approximately 25 mils, but these ones are all alike and these ones are all alike. So what I'm going to need to do is machine the boards down for the door to the thickness of the thinner ones, otherwise I won't have enough at the same thickness. So that's what I'll do. These will make up the door, well, these plus a few of these will make up the door. They're all relatively straight apart from these two. You may be able to see it from there, maybe you can't. They're a bit more sort of bowed sideways, so I won't use those for the door. Once you've cut them in half, the bow will be less obvious, and then it'll be easier to plane those into a rectangular shape. I'll use those for another purpose. Yeah, not for the door anyway. So I'll start machining these and a few of these for the door. So that was a bit of a chore, just because of how many boards I'm working with. Now, seasoned woodworkers might have noticed a potential flaw in my process. Rest assured, I am not unaware of it. You see, what people often do if they have the means to do it, in order to get a good square board, is they'll joint the face and they'll joint an edge. They'll also put it through the planer to to flatten the other side and make them parallel. I haven't done that yet. But then what they'll do is they'll put the board on their table saw and they'll run that straight edge that they've just created with their jointer along the fence of their table saw, and the table saw blade will cut the opposite edge straight and parallel with the one that they've planed. I don't have a table saw, so I can't do that. That means, by, as I have just been doing, jointing one edge and then jointing the opposite edge, I've created two nice straight edges, but they might not be perfectly parallel with each other. They might be, but that would be a bit of a fluke if they were all perfect. They won't be all perfect. What that's going to mean is that if I just take all these boards and glue them together edge to edge to make a big rectangle, it's not going to be a rectangle because not all of these edges are parallel, and so the left and right edges on that door are not going to be parallel either. I do have two methods of fixing that. You'll have to keep watching. Okay, that'll do for now. I'll come back out to the workshop tomorrow and do a little bit more. So it's the evening and I've just laid down enough boards to make the door. I can see that I machined two more than I need to, which is good. It's better to have more than you need. I can see some of the jointing near the end is not too flash, especially that one where there's a large hump in the middle. I don't have, as I said, a table saw to run any of these boards through, but for a couple of them, just two, that's the second one there, I believe, or maybe the one next to it, I'll check. I'll run them through my band saw against the fence. That will at least give me a roughly straight edge, and then I will rejoint that edge on my planer. That should be pretty good. So you can clearly see that hump that I was talking about. The offcut is, well, it starts off as a taper, gets a fair bit thicker in the middle, and then tapers off again at the end. So I'll just joint this edge now, and then I should have a roughly parallel set of edges. All right. Is it perfect now? No, not quite. It'll be better when I've actually tightened the clamps, but that's definitely good enough. I ended up, following that process, cutting off an edge that wasn't quite straight on a number of these boards, which had the effect of reducing the width of this door piece. So I took one of those additional two pieces that I had machined and didn't need to, and cut a wide-ish strip of one of those and plonked it in the middle so that things are symmetrical to make up the width that I lost, and that's good. That's good, and I will have enough pieces there for all the bracing, I believe. Now remember that problem I highlighted where, using the method that I was using, I was jointing each. There's an early childhood centre across the road, or just almost across the road, and every time a truck goes by it toots its horn because the kids like it, which is nice, but it interferes with my video. Recall that I pointed out that I jointed each edge of the board straight, although not perfectly straight as we saw, but that introduced the possibility that I wasn't jointing them parallel because I wasn't using a table saw, because I don't have one. I will have actually fixed that problem to some extent with the bandsaw technique actually, but I said that I had a couple of ways of dealing with the problem of the edges of the door not being parallel if that problem arose. Those methods were, number one, I was going to flip and turn the boards as necessary to get the edges as parallel as possible, because if the edges of each board are not parallel, the one end will be slightly wider than the other, and that'll be different for every board. So by mixing them and matching them, I could probably get it pretty good. The other method was getting it as good as I can, but if it's still not that great, then after the glue up, I'll take my track saw and cut out a rectangle just to make sure that I've got one. But of course there's no point in trying to engage in solutions if there isn't a problem. So let's measure this. Let's measure. And remember, this is not a precision piece of woodworking. This is a barn door. So if the top is, a few millimeters narrower or wider than the bottom, that's okay. So I have got 119 and a half centimeters, and over here, and this is going to change slightly when I clamp it too. Over here I have got, I'm going to show you this because it seems kind of, well, it might not seem unbelievable to some people, but it seems kind of unbelievable to me, so I will show you. I'm going to measure this again just so that I can show you the numbers so you can see them with your own two eyes. So that's 119, well, about 0.4 centimeters. And this is 119, almost 0.5, maybe 0.49. So that's actually pretty remarkable. So I don't need to fix the problem because it isn't a problem, but at least you know there was a solution available. Okay, now I'm going to measure this to, what did I say the height would be? 205 centimeters. I'll double check before I mark that. I'll go back out to the shed and mark and measure the opening, and then I'll start cutting out my pieces of bracing before the big glue up. This is the board that had the worst of the bows in it. Now if you take a board like that and try to plane it until the edges are straight, you're going to plane off a lot of material. What you should do in that situation is think about your project and think about whether or not you need shorter boards for any parts of it, and use that piece for those, because when you've cut it in half or just made it a lot shorter, then planing it until the edges are straight is going to involve removing a lot less material. So that's what I've done. So where I'm going to be screwing these cross braces onto the door boards, I've marked dots that I'm going to drill before I screw anything. So I mentioned earlier, and I'll probably mention this on lots of projects because it's often going to be an issue, especially on tables and doors, that in warm, more moist conditions, that's such a bad word, wood expands, and when things dry out, wood contracts, it shrinks, and the expansion happens by the fibers that make up the grain that run along the wood getting further apart. So basically the door will get wider when things expand. So if I fasten these braces down in such a way that doesn't allow for any movement, well, the door is going to want to get wider and the braces are going to be trying to hold things in place, something might break, and I don't want that to happen. Come over to my workbench, I'll show you how I'm going to get around that. So these are the screws that I'm going to use on the braces to hold them on. And it's important that I found screws like this. I could have used button heads or pan heads or hex heads, which kind of have this button type thing on top. I need something to be sitting on top of the wood in order for this technique to work. Now these are 12 gauge, which has a diameter of about 5.5 millimeters, or exactly 5.5 millimeters according to Google. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill holes that are slightly larger than that. These are 7 millimeters in diameter, so 1.5 millimeters. And what that does, I mean, it's obvious what it will do. The cogs are probably turning in your head right now, and you're saying, I see how this is going to work. Just put my earmuffs on. So this piece of wood was a terrible one to use because it was going to break. I would like to show you though. I shall use this. I think that'll be fine. I think maybe I'm going to have to pre-drill more than just the top piece, but okay. I'll pretend that bottom one didn't break and the screw is just there. Because the hole is larger than the shaft of the screw, it allows for a small amount of movement. It doesn't have to allow very much, but that makes it much more unlikely, I suppose I should say much less likely, to cause any damage. I can still do the screw up fairly tightly, and that piece of wood will be forced to move before anything is forced to break. So I'm not doing the larger holes for the side pieces because they can just be fastened on tight and that doesn't matter. I've already done the other braces, and I've already drilled the pilot holes that go all the way through. So these larger holes are just, and it's important that I only put these larger holes in the top piece. If I go all the way down, then the screw will have nothing to grip onto. Okay, what I'm going to have to do next is take this apart because nothing's attached, it's all just sitting here. Take this apart, glue the vertical pieces together in the clamps, and while they're still in the clamps, I'll then screw the brace pieces on, which will of course help the glue up, help everything stay together, so that I put everything back together the right way. I'm just putting some markings on. Okay, first thing tomorrow, I'll do the glue up. I haven't really been looking forward to this. Big glue ups aren't that much fun. I'm going to be using Selleys Aquahere exterior wood glue because, well, this door is going to be exposed to the elements. So let's just do it. I'll put my headphones on and listen to some music and get this out of the way. All done. Didn't go perfectly, and the main reason for that is even though I put marks on these boards, I ignored them. When it came to the first board, I put it the wrong way around, which created problems fitting that board in, but I managed to loosen things up and get it in. I re-drilled a couple of the holes on the surface, and it seemed like I had drilled too far with the large hole because those screws were spinning. But that's all done. Okay, that will do. I'll brush this off, get it out of the rain, and when the weather is good next, I'll bring it out. I'll drill the holes for the hardware to attach to it, and I'll stain it, and then we'll hang it. One more thing. I was obviously a bit gung-ho in screwing on the bracing. I should have clamped things up tighter first before I screwed the bracing on, because there are gaps everywhere. I mean, there are also parts that aren't gappy. So, I mean, the thing is held together well enough by glue in most places and the bracing. And it's a barn door. That's going to be my excuse forever. It's just a barn door. It's supposed to look rustic. Alas, the weather forecast still says that it will not rain today. So I suppose I should just carry on because it's not raining. So I stained this yesterday evening. I didn't realise it was going to rain. I don't think it was forecast to rain. But then it did rain. And I started to ruin this. I threw the tarpaulin over it, but it was too late. The damage was done. So now I'm going to have to apply another coat, which I only just have in the bucket, so record all this messing about, and there was more messing about than I thought there would be, because I couldn't just attach these standoffs for the rail to the shed, or else the sliding mechanism down there would touch the window. So I put a plank on there so that they wouldn't touch the window, but I didn't check, and it's not thick enough, and they were still touching the window. So I put a second plank on. I may stain that. I'm really focusing on the carpentry aspects of this job and not so much the fitting, but I've just stuck a bit of tape there to show how far the door can sit up without interfering with the hardware, and that will guide me in placing the holes in the door. That's pretty good. Now I'm going to have to do something to stop it from swinging in the breeze, because it stands out quite a bit from the wall as well. But that shouldn't be too tricky. Watch this space. Okay, well, on this gloriously warm spring day, this project comes to a close. Well, not entirely to a close. There are still a couple of things that I need to do, but I can't do just now because I don't have the parts. I'm not sure if I have a handle sitting around somewhere. I'll see if I can find it. Otherwise, I'll buy a handle for it. I'm also going to get a hook for it to hold it in the closed position. It does have the slightest, you can see it there, slightest tendency to roll that way. Not much though, as you can see. And that could just be a matter of me not installing the rail perfectly level, but that's all right. Okay, so yeah, look, I have kind of enjoyed this project, but it hasn't really been one that I wanted to do. It's just one that I kind of needed to do, and it's also been holding me up from some other things that I really do want to do. So let's get on to those now. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, and even after then, I'm Glenn Peoples, the Peoples Carpenter. Take care.